ABC News video of the parents and children who crossed the border on July 3rd, fleeing the violence in Central American countries. By then, Virginia had already accepted more than 2,000 of these kids, according to the U.S. Office of Refugee Resettlement. And while many were not welcomed with open arms at the border, the vice chair of the Isle of Wight County Board of Supervisors in Virginia, Rex Alphon, says that they will be welcomed at their schools next week.
Isle of Wight school systems, as all school systems in the Commonwealth, have been instructed to immediately enroll these children within the school system.
Alphon says in this letter the Department of Education sent out at the beginning of August, it clarifies an old federal law that mandates every child has a right to an education despite their immigration status.
$761 million. That's the estimated and much tossed around cost Americans will bear for educating young illegal immigrants that have come to this country in recent months. That takes in almost 38,000 youngsters now flooding the system in a multitude of states and placing a severe burden on systems already feeling a financial pinch. So what is the answer to the next step in what is a growing national problem? Let's welcome to MidPoint senior contributor to the Daily Signal, Genevieve Wood. And let's welcome back from the DRM Action Coalition, a lobbying group seeking changes in immigration and policy and law, Cesar Vargas. Genevieve, Cesar, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, here we go. Let's start right out, first of all, with the Department of Education. Here is exactly what they say. All children in the United States are entitled to equal access to a public elementary and secondary education, regardless of their or their parents' actual or perceived national origin, citizenship, or immigration status. Genevieve, I'm going to start with you. I hear from an awful lot of people here, and most of them are actually educators who say, I understand what this says, but this has got to stop. We're overloaded already. We're working out of temporary facilities many ways in schools right now. We don't have the money, and we're getting hit even more with kids, and our kids that we have right now we can't teach. So how unfair is it to the educational system now to put more kids in when they just can't handle it financially?
Well, it's completely unfair, but we are where we are because you have lawmakers and government officials who are all about enforcing this law when it comes to dealing with those who are here illegally, but they don't want to deal with things like securing the border, which is why we're in the place that we are today. I mean, look, I don't think any of us think that that having children in our country who aren't getting an education is a good idea. But the problem is, it's not the kids, it's the fact that they're here illegally, they were allowed to come here illegally, and this is something the Supreme Court ruled on in 1982. So I think that what we ought to do is not go be protesting schools and protesting the children. We ought to be voting in November and making sure and holding accountable lawmakers, whether it's governors, people running for Senate, people running in the House, and eventually the president, to make sure that they're securing our borders so that we don't end up in a place like this. But to your point, I mean, look, Governor Mary Fallin wrote for the Daily Signal on this a couple of months ago. She said, in Oklahoma, we already have 1 in 4 children in that state, they're there legally, not graduating from high school. She's like, now you're compounding that problem by putting more students in. And as we all know, it's not just about dollars. There's a lot more that goes into education than just money.
Cesar, let's take out of the mix for a minute, because I know where these arguments always go. There are those people, not yourself, but there are those people who would say, this is against the children. There are people out there, Republicans, the right, whatever you want to call them, that are basically hammering away at the children, and they're the ones who are suffering. Can we just take that out of the argument for a moment and just say that this is about overcrowded schools in America, and the fact that many of these, matter of fact, in one school, they actually had in Houston, they had to start a local school district specifically and create schools specifically for these kids who are coming over as illegals. What about the burden this places on the kids who are here right now?
No, I think, well, I think what Denise did mention is that, right now we do need to make sure that these children are here. And yes, the federal law does dictate this. And the fact that they're here is also by a federal law, the actual trafficking law that both members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, agreed to pass unanimously in 2008.
Well, you would agree that that law, and you're talking about the human trafficking law, that has been subjugated and subverted in many ways when it comes by those who are coming across the border. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's right now it's actually playing out the way it was intentionally played out, to make sure that those children who come from Central America are able to get the due process. But going back to the actual issue of schools, absolutely, the fact that I really agree, the fact that it's really, we need to hold accountable our elected officials who right now seem to be pointing fingers at each other rather than addressing what the school needs are. In the schools, whether you're Republican or Democrat, Republican district or Democrat district, we need to address the overcrowding of the issues. And I agree, it's more than just the money. It's the teachers who need to make sure that they need to have the space and the right number of students to give an adequate and reliable education. So it's really members of Congress who have to come together to say, you know what, we need this X amount of money. We need to make sure that whoever is not supposed to be here, whether they don't qualify for any type of immigration relief, then that has to be enforced.
But what do we do right now? Cesar, I'm agreeing. I think even Genevieve would agree with some of you right now on what you've said. But what do we do now when we continue to say that something needs to be done? I got to be honest with you. I have 3 friends of mine who are higher education educators, and they all tell me we're raising a generation of idiots because, quite frankly, my schools are too overloaded. We don't have the way to teach the kids that are here right now, and we have new students in here. We can't do it. We're raising a bunch of dummies.
Well, that's again, in terms of the administration of schools, it's a difficult issue right now. We definitely need to make sure that all these children, we cannot blame the children. These children need education. Federal law requires it, and it's what we as a civil society should do. But at the same time, we need to make sure that our local officials, not Congress, forget about Congress, that our local officials are able to make sure that we manage money, we administer proper efficient systems to ensure that these children and American children are able to get the education system. So I think at this point it's about making sure that we work together, not at the national level. Politics in Congress is it's really a joke, but we can do this at the local level, and we're seeing mayors, we're seeing city council.
Okay, I'm getting you here on local level right now. Genevieve, is that the answer here simply is to stop worrying about what happens in Washington and something's got to happen at the local level? I only ask that because, again, every time we have a discussion like this, and this is what people are sick and tired of hearing, frankly, we've got to do this, we need to do this. Something's got to be done now. The school year is here, and these kids are not getting educated properly, even the ones who were born in America right now in many of these school districts.
Yeah, well, we could do something besides just giving schools more money and just accepting the problem as it is. Look, Congress had this debate. The president ended up not going along with it, but they reversed that trafficking law. The House of Representatives voted to because they realized what a problem it was causing. And the fact is, many of the children, and let's be clear, it's not just children who came across over the course of this past summer. You had almost 60,000 folks since January coming up from Central America. The reality is Congress, or the House at least, acted to reverse that. They would have said, we can deport these folks back to their home countries much faster. That's what we should be spending our time and our money trying to make happen, is getting folks who came here illegally to go back home. Not just saying, well, they're here now, so we just got to all deal with it and absorb them into the schools. I don't think that's the answer, because then what happens? You end up with that same problem, just even bigger next year.
Cesar, wouldn't you also agree that
there's a way to come here legally, and that if you come here illegally, you're not going to get all these benefits? The fact that we keep giving them is why more people keep coming.
Cesar, wouldn't you agree, though, also that when you have the illegals that are coming in here right now, they may be put in the schools, but they're not getting a quality education either at this point, because they have to learn how to speak English. There's many teachers, they can't take care of it. They don't have the teachers. Even they're being held back in many ways because they're having to come to an entirely new system and start over again.
Yeah, no, and there's definitely a lot of problems in the education system. But in terms of just monetary-wise, right? Genevieve said that we need to make sure that those resources that we're spending are to deporting children. But the fact is, right now, this country is spending $18 billion in immigration enforcement. That's more than the DEA, the FBI, and other law enforcement federal agencies. All that money, where's all that money going to? Why can't we allocate some of that money to actual schools? So it's about understand where our priorities are.
So you want to take money away from what is now being used for the immigration, and you want to put it into schools?
Let's be clear.
Hold on a sec, Genevieve. Hold on 1 sec. Cesar, you got 20 seconds to answer that.
It's smartly allocating resources. The president's been deporting over 2 million people. And the reality is, a lot of these children, we keep talking about they just come in here. A lot of these children came like World War II, like the Cubans seeking refuge from dictators. These children came because they were fleeing literally violence, death from gang violence, from very corrupt government. So we need to understand that as a country, this is a moral obligation, because we are a country of liberty and freedom, not a country that turns away people.
I got 25 seconds, Genevieve. You get the last word.
All right, well, increasingly, we're a country that can't secure our own borders. We've had over 59,000 people come here since January. Only 300-something have actually been sent back. So the idea that our border department is spending money doing what it ought to be doing in those cases just isn't happening. The reality is we have to be a country of laws. If we want to be a place where people do want to come and can realize the American dream, like these children, we've got to be a country that can afford it, and that can actually be a country of laws to decide who goes and comes from our country.
We've got to get some help to these teachers sometimes, I'll tell you that much. Genevieve Wood and Cesar Vargas, thank you so much for a spirited conversation. We will do this again.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, later on this hour, should Congress be seeking to get involved with the NFL over domestic abuse? And after the break, not really a whole lot to celebrate around Yahoo. Both the Americans and the Mexicans are after the tech giant right now. It's the Money Master, a check on Wall Street as well, and we continue right here on MidPoint.